Welcome back, 9 to noon. We will indeed dig into some Vikes Bites, but a couple of text messages off the last segment. Peter from Long Lake. I worked for the Lacrosse Loggers for 3 years, used to run their ticket department. Max Scherzer and Chris Sale both played for the Lacrosse Loggers. Now, Chris Sale, sadly, has been injured probably since he played for the Loggers. But wow, Brandon Crawford played for the Moondogs.
Oh, geez.
So all sorts.
Chris Sale.
Yeah. And he credits his Loggers coach apparently for changing his arm angle that ultimately made him the stud he was.
Right.
Again, tongue-in-cheek, sadly, he's had some tough years health-wise.
And Brandon Crawford, I believe, was Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah.
And he was fast as bleep.
Still plays for the Cards, too.
Oh, does he really? That's the Crawford for the Cards.
I think he's 36, 37 now. He's older, but
geez.
It's a good league. Yeah. Like, it doesn't get as much hype as the Cape Cod League, but it's not that different than the Cape Cod League.
Well, it was the Great Plains League and the Great Lakes League, and they sprinkled in some ladies from the softball teams, and holy cow, with the way it's unbelievable how powerful those ladies are hitting those home runs. Granted, of course, over a softball type setup or configuration compared to home runs. But, man, it's this may be stretching it a little bit, but some of those ladies I saw last night hitting home runs, they could have had Jenny Finch out there pitching to them.
I always love that one.
And they still would, the ladies still would have hit it 300 feet or whatever it is. So it's just the quality of talent, the workouts in the off season and everything. That was a treat last night.
Yeah, that's fun.
Ben Goessling at Ben Goessling covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. Don't forget about the podcasts. And we have some clips coming up here shortly from Kevin O'Connell and or Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. So I don't want to step on your touchdown call, Nordo. But yesterday, the general manager and head coach, specifically the head coach, started the press conference, the training camp preview, honoring the memory of Kyrie Jackson. And any clips on that over there?
Yeah, here's specifically Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah talking about Kyrie Jackson passing away, of course, in that tragic accident.
I know I've lost a father early, a close friend in college at a young age, and how I honored them and how I think we'll all honor Kyrie is by the memories we have of him while we travel every day and we think and laugh and smile about what he might have said or what he might have did, how we live our lives, how we smile, how we live with joy, how we work hard, how we approach our craft. That's how we'll honor him on a day-to-day basis. And in that environment, there's nobody else I'd rather have leading this team than this guy sitting next to me. Just the culture he's built, and that'll test it, but I'm sure we'll be up to the task.
Now, the guy sitting next to him, of course, being head coach Kevin O'Connell. It was also, in addition to that audio, further on, and as part of the conversation, Ben, you were there, and PA, you were as well, that they intend to pay his signing bonus, I think, was around $830,000, and whatever remains and what hasn't been given to him yet will be paid to the estate. They'll also provide $20,000 for funeral expenses, and it sounds like they'll honor him via decal or patch as well in 2024.
Yeah, yes. That was a nice touch, right?
Yeah, it was. And I figured they would have something to that effect yesterday where they were putting a helmet decal on or something like that. But I think the gesture to pay the signing bonus to the estate and then cover the part of the funeral costs as well is it's certainly a good gesture. It's a nice gesture, very classy move by them. And I think my sense is that the family has appreciated it quite a bit as well. The funeral that he's doing on Friday it's a joint service with Isaiah Hazel, who was the driver of the vehicle with the three guys that were killed on July 6th. So the Vikings, basically, the portion they contributed, as I understand it, is for Kyrie Jackson's family specifically, and then Kwesi, Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores, Matt Daniels, and Durante Jones, I believe, are all attending this service on Friday in Maryland.
Right. Vikes Bite, numero dos. What do you got up your sleeve?
Vikes Bites! Let's cover the other off-the-field related topic, and that has been, over the last couple of weeks, it's been Jordan Addison. And here's the head coach talking about accountability as it pertains to Jordan Addison, what happened in L.A., and moving forward.
I think it's really important that the discipline side of things is an accountability, personal responsibility. Those are things we will talk about, and I will personally talk about with Jordan. But at the same time, there's going to be there's a continuing legal process playing out in the NFL.
through the different aspects of their process to play out. But we'll let those things happen, and then from regards to specifics and details of discipline and things like that, the time will come for that.
Ben asked O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah a pretty cool question during that, or a pretty pertinent question, should I say, during the course of that exchange. But correct me if I'm wrong here, because I went out of touch a little bit the last couple of days. Is there ambiguity in like his blood alcohol count or exactly what he was doing, like sleeping in the Rolls Royce or whatever it was?
Well, so. And Nordo and I got into this a little bit last week, kind of talking about some of this stuff. My sense of it, after looking into the arrest report a little more, is the coding for the arrest was for alcohol.
Okay.
There is no information about blood alcohol content in the arrest report that I've seen, and I've to look for updates the last couple of days. Haven't seen anything new on that front. So I believe we are, in fact, talking about alcohol after having looked at it a little further from when Nordo and I were talking last week. But I don't know exactly. I mean, in California, it's cite and release. So he was out a couple of hours later. He wasn't necessarily booked into jail in quite the same way. So, yeah, why there wasn't blood alcohol information in there, I'm not entirely sure what the process would have been there that wouldn't have gotten to that information. But at least from what we've seen, I have not seen that.
Right.
Yeah, and he could. I think he has the ability to refuse testing.
Yeah.
And then if they go beyond that, if they want a blood test, do they need a warrant of some sort or an order to be able to execute that? But he's only in custody for 2.5 hours. How does that all work out?
See, I'm tripping right now, man, and I apologize if I saw something or remember it, misremember it, or remember it erroneously. But was there like this might not have been alcohol, it might have been pot?
Yeah, we talked about it last week.
We did. I personally, speculated that wasn't out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah,
simply
I thought it was a good
because in the arrest report, there was no mention at all of blood alcohol content. And then, as Ben mentioned, you're trying to simultaneously figure out, okay, cite and release. Well, why do they do this? What does that mean in the context of their legal system, specifically in California? So I had put that out there. I'm just thinking maybe it was marijuana. And if he doesn't have these things in his vehicle, there would be a lack of proof that it took place unless he's subjected to testing. So in the end, the legal process is going to play out. And it sounds like they're going to handle it appropriately when they get some finality to it.
And lastly here from me, but with this situation is, so you say the blood alcohol count, the BAC, was not in the arrest report.
Yep.
Well, because the tone from Kevin yesterday at the press conference, I mean, was like, this is they leave and there are mandates and standards that they just know they have to follow. Yeah. So he was stern in essence, like if he that he knows that like something wasn't good at all.
Yeah, I don't think they're terribly happy about it. I mean, especially when you add this to last year going 140 and getting pulled over for that.
Wow,
right after he come to Minnesota. Yeah, so it's twice is a little more of a pattern, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens from this. Now, he alluded to this a little bit. Their hands they're not tied, but the NFL tends to kind of take the lead on these things. I think what tends to happen, and it doesn't always go this way, but the legal process plays out, and then when that's done, the NFL tends to issue discipline after that. So the NFL probably gets the first decision, so to speak, on what they're going to do. Now,
so could he be suspended?
He could. Yeah, I mean, DUI.
For like 2 games?
Yeah, DUI, I think, typically has been 3.
Okay.
In fact, when Wes Phillips got suspended for 3 weeks without pay,
but how do you know he had a DUI? I'm sorry to clip if there's no blood alcohol count.
Well, the arrest was on suspicion of DUI. So I assume they must have done at least like the observation test, even if they didn't do BAC. So, yeah, typically that has been 3 games. If players, and we'll have to see what the charges look like and how all of that plays out in court, but that has typically been the standard is a 3-game thing for DUI. So we'll see if it goes that way with him. The Vikings, I suppose, could deactivate or bench him and that kind of thing beyond that. My sense of it is that the league will probably kind of set the tone on this one. I don't think the Vikings will go above and beyond that necessarily. And I don't know for sure. They could change their minds on that. But my sense of it last week, at least, was that the league's disciplinary process, personal conduct policy stuff will probably take the lead here.
Vikes Bites Numero Trace, provided by
Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. A couple more audio bits for you guys. And this one in particular, Kevin O'Connell talking about TJ Hawkinson, Mr. Van Ginkel's injuries as we enter training camp. TJ and Najee Thompson on the PUP list, Dwayne McBride on the non-football injury list. But here's what KOC said about Mr. Hawkinson and Mr. Van Ginkel.
TJ will begin training camp on the PUP list. He's well ahead of schedule from a standpoint of some of the benchmarks throughout his rehab, and he's done it. TJ has, looking back at the offseason program, did not miss really a day outside of going to see his surgeon in Los Angeles, and he was here every single day. And then that continued through the summer. So I think Tyler and his staff feel really good about where he's at. But, the significant injury that it was, we want to make sure throughout our plan to when TJ makes it back on the field and can begin doing more and more throughout training camp, and then hopefully at some point when he's ready to go, we want to make sure that, everything is done the right way for TJ, because he is such a significant part of our organization moving forward. And then just with Van Ginkel, he should, more than likely, be able to start working himself into a pretty regular workload to start, hopefully, training camp. But he has not yet, obviously, worked, with that group full speed. So we'll probably use the ramp up period and maybe a few of those days beyond to kind of gauge and see exactly how he's working through that early kind of participation. But the expectation is we should be able to get him rolling here pretty good.
So my understanding here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, is that on the PUP list, now Van Ginkel, it sounds like he can start practicing really in short order at some point, expect him earlier than not. But with TJ Hawkinson on the PUP list, he can actually come back and start playing at any point in training camp, but then he's active. He can't go back on the PUP list. So then if he's on the PUP list for all of training camp, they can send him to reserve PUP, in which he would have to miss the first 4 games of the season. But it sounds like he's on track. But again, talking about ambiguity, trying to wonder what that looks like in terms of when he gets back is still a question as we enter camp.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the other thing I would mention is O'Connell had said this, I think at the end of OTAs or minicamp, I'd asked him about Hawkinson at that point, and he'd mentioned they may be able to put him on injured reserve at the start of the season rather than the PUP list, with the goal being they get him back sooner off of short-term IR than they would from the PUP. So I took that to mean they're somewhat optimistic about when he's able to return, and that it's not going to be as far into the season as you might otherwise think, given the timing of when the injury happened, and then the fact that he didn't have the surgery until the end of January because they waited for that MCL to heal. Remember, he tore both the ACL and MCL. MCL healed on its own. The ACL surgery happened after that, but that didn't happen, I think, until the end of January. So the timing of all of that would have made you think, okay, this is probably going into October, and it's still possible that it would, but man, that the ACL recoveries on these things seem to get faster all the time. And it certainly seems like there's optimism that he may be on that track rather than something that's a little bit longer than that.
So during minicamp or organized team activities, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I was standing next to you one time when we commented on it. When we would see the tight end TJ Hawkinson on the Mike Hughes Memorial Field, and he was running fast. Yep. I mean, like TJ's a fast cat. But, I mean, this wasn't haphazardly like sprinting.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say sprinting. This wasn't haphazardly running.
Yeah.
I mean, to the untrained eye, man, on the Mike Hughes Memorial Field, he looked pretty good.
Yeah. He was, I think, at that point, I mean, there have been a number of things that you just kind of watch him on the side fields, and it's like, well, this is farther ahead than I would have expected. And, you're sitting here kind of trying to frame this up based on rehabs you've seen in the past, and everything's a little different, and the timing of the recoveries, like I say, has gotten faster. So that's, and obviously neither a doctor nor do I play one on the radio. So trying to use my eye as a medical opinion, I would do that with a large spoon of salt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have been, I think, impressed by what I've seen and the progression that we've seen from that so far.
Vikes bite numero cuatro.
And this is head coach Kevin O'Connell kind of framing up what we should expect to see from a rep standpoint. QB1, QB2, who are they? Let's listen.
Yeah, I have no, preconceived, preset depth chart in my mind beyond. I believe I said, at the end of spring, Sam was, the number one quarterback. He had taken a lot of the reps and most of the reps with the ones. And Sam had a great spring. JJ came in here after being drafted and had a really productive spring as well. So really my message to those guys is I want a really competitive situation. Sam will, obviously be, taking the majority of his reps with that first group, but I think you'll see JJ maybe get some as well. But also it's about the quality and as much as the volume of those reps throughout camp to really kind of continue to holistically attack this quarterback development program and process for JJ, while also knowing that doesn't mean the expectation is that Sam doesn't have a process either. We've got individualized plans for all of our guys, and where that depth chart falls, for our first game, we get a whole lot of time on the grass and 3 preseason opportunities, 2 joint practices to really work through exactly where each individual guy is at this point in time going into the season.
I'm glad Nordo dropped that in Vikes Bites, because when Kevin said, we don't have a quarterback depth chart.
Yeah.
Sure you do. I mean, with all due respect.
Sure.
It may not, you could be like, well, what are you talking about? We Hall and McCarthy, how are we going to split that? Okay. It's semantics. But it's, I'm starting to sense with some things that I've done either with O'Connell away from radio or the presser yesterday, they're starting to get coy or attempt to get coy about what's going to happen through training camp with their quarterback situation. Because amazingly, and maybe it shouldn't be amazingly, like if somebody called me and asked me to talk about Drake May and New England Patriots training camp, I don't know what the vibe is.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to use Jacoby Brissett in Darnold-like fashion and just wait for the North Carolina kid. But we're not in Foxborough. There are so many people, and I keep seeing it. I even hear it on KFAN, which surprises me. It shouldn't, but it does. That, I think McCarthy will be under center by October. That's, I mean, honestly, I'd give you 10 to, unless there's injury, multiple injuries.
Yeah.
I'll meet anybody by Sir Leonard Dykkert's, the accomplished pianist piano, in the lobby of this building. I'll give you 10 to 1. McCarthy playing by October. I just don't think it's going to happen unless there are multiple injuries. What about you?
I'm with you. I think, because the plan the entire time before all of the training camp coyness kind of starts, what they have planned, at least as far as I've understood it from talking to people and kind of reading what they see or reading what they say publicly and then kind of private conversations, is that they don't want to rush this process with him. I just don't think the standard is going to be, is he better than Sam Darnold? And if so, let's give him the job. I think this is much more about, I'm probably sounding like a broken record here, but we've had the conversation and we're going to continue to have the conversation because people are going to keep asking about it. I think the standard for them is when he's ready to go, when he is ready to be the guy in every aspect of that phrase, however you consider to be the guy, that to me means ball placement. It means footwork. It means being able to figure out where the space is in coverages to hit receivers in stride. It means handling the offense, making decisions at the line of scrimmage, at least to the capacity that they want a rookie to do it. Once he's ready to do all of those things to a level that they say we can run forward with this guy and we don't have to worry about setbacks and kind of pulling him out of the lineup or anything like that, I think that's when he takes the job. If that's September 8th, great. I don't expect that they are rushing anything to that point.
Right.
If he is there, it's because he's been so good that they say, okay, let's just run with it. Otherwise, I don't think they're going to be pushing this timetable to the point where we need to be talking about what day are we going to see him.
More Vikings conversation with Ben Goessling at Ben Goessling via Twitter, and he covers the Vikings for the Star Tribune at StarTribune.com. The adversarial updates continue 30 minutes from now. Wayne Larrivee, the play-by-play voice for the Green Bay Packers, joins at 11 o'clock. And right now we got some money to give away, so here's the cash thing.
The Fan, along with BigDeck.com, want to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand, and you go to KFAN.com, and you enter the keyword grand, and you might win $1,000. So use the keyword grand at KFAN.com.
10:33 in the neighborhood. Welcome back. It's Paul Allen by your side, 9 to noon. Mad Producer produces, and he would like to amplify the previous conversation.
Yeah, one last thing on that regarding the start time or when we would see JJ. Mm-hmm. Part of that I feels like it goes into the way that you guys were discussing in last segment. Is it in absence of results? So it's kind of the idea that the development of the plan for JJ McCarthy is so set in stone that results in themselves may not play into it, where we're starting
training camp results,
or like Sam Darnold results,
results in season. So, it was a conversation last week as well. It feels to me that, and I would not be mad with this, and talking about the patience of Vikings fans, if it was Sam Darnold into Nick Mullins into JJ McCarthy, and what Vikings fans might think of that. I mean, it was interesting to hear the results and the opinions on it, but is it so in absence of results that Sam Darnold gets his go, things are just hideous, and we get into that bye week, and it's Nick Mullins against the Kiddies in week 7 instead of JJ, because we're so beholden to the plan. Long term, it's great; they believe in it, but do you believe that results play little or nothing into ultimately that debut date that we were talking about?
That's a fantastic question, and it's 9 to noon is not a show or an entity that will take 10 opinions at the 64686 text line or via the free iHeartRadio app with talkbacks, and we'll be like, this is Creed. But just out of curiosity, if it's laid out, Darnold into Mullins, let's just stop there. Like, what response did you get, Nordo? And then after that, Ben, how do you think the fan base would handle it?
Largely, I saw it last week. People would be negative on that because they still feel you're attaching that draft pick. We kind of went down the road like Dallas Turner, first round pick. He's got to start. JJ McCarthy, that's a different conversation given the position. And so kind of laying that out.
That's an interesting dichotomy because they're both 21 years of age.
Yeah.
And one plays a markedly more physical position than the other. And I mean, if we were to, it's like heaven or hell and you got to be right, Dallas Turner will play 70% of the snaps minimum, I would say.
Yeah.
McCarthy will play 0% to start. So anyway.
But to that end, I felt like people were in living in the world of the depth chart, who's ultimately inactive. One of these two could be an emergency QB. They changed that rule a couple of years ago. I felt like there was a lot of disappointment into the idea or concept that Mullins would start week 1 against the Giants as your primary backup. And so then that's what drew me into the results conversation. Yeah. Obviously, practices can dictate this, but I feel like people, and so that's what led down the road of people like, if things are just so putrid, does the development plan, this competitive rebuild has turned into a disaster where that first round pick that Kwesi held on to is closer to top 10 than it is to final 10.
Yeah.
So maybe we give the kid a shot. And so that's kind of where things flowed last week.
How would you add to that?
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. And I think the thing I go back to a little bit, O'Connell said it. I think it was maybe at the appearance he did at the church out in the west suburbs, where he talked about himself being the QB killer, and he had to be the QB killer a lot of times.
That was fascinating.
Yeah,
because I want to know the QBs he killed.
Yes,
and I haven't asked, and I probably won't, but I'd like to know.
Yeah, I think there's. Yeah, I think some of it is probably he is going to have to be that for McCarthy. He I think talked about like, I want to be the person that everybody else is saying, hey, he needs to get in. He's ready to go. Why aren't we playing him? And he says, no, I'm not quite there yet. There's still some things I want to see. he has talked about it in the context of like, I'm going to play that role. I'm okay playing that role. It is, I think, more difficult to do that when you're the head coach as opposed to an offensive coordinator. You just have more time where you're answerable to the public via press conferences. Like, you have people like me asking him questions more often than an offensive coordinator would. You're just going to hear those things from the public in different ways. Ownership certainly sees it, all of those kinds of things. I think he will stick to his guns on that, but yeah, I do think it is a little more difficult to do it. There's no doubt. When you're the head coach, you have to walk that line and be the forward-facing piece of this plan and defend it publicly more so than you would as an OC or a QB coach.
Okay, well, just to land the plane on this, it's forget the blue chippers taken in front of him or the perceived blue chippers taken in front of McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if the anti-Vike unfurls Bo Nix and he looks the part? I mean, they're not going to the playoffs. I don't think they are.
Yeah.
But say like he looks the part, then I just wonder how that will be handled here.
In terms of if Bo Nix looks good, does that change the timeline for McCarthy at all?
No, just the public. We're talking public opinion and perception here.
Fan base will notice.
Yeah, I mean, if
they will.
Bo Nix comes out with a couple of 340s, 3-1 or 3-0, all of a sudden the attention, the direction of the attention's changed.
And you
here
get a couple of smug Sean Payton press conference clips to chew on.
Awful.
Yeah, there could be some of that. Yeah, it's tricky. I think, and maybe I'll be wrong on this, but the conviction with which they have laid out some of the quarterback plan does make me think that they will stick to their guns and say, "Oh yeah, we're going to play him when we feel he's ready." Mm-hmm. And the sticky wicket to that whole thing, of course, is that they are the ones that determine that. Like, none of us are going to be able to completely vet that because we don't have full access to practice. We don't see all the meetings. We don't watch with the same trained eyes that they do. Mm-hmm. So you are dependent always on this stuff, a little bit of how they frame it. And if they feel like, well, there is pressure to play him and we need to bow to the pressure, but we don't want anybody to know that we bowed to the pressure.
Yeah.
There's a way to set that up for them where they say, oh yeah, we felt he was ready. We saw everything we needed to see. I mean,
look where we took him. Watch him in Michigan.
Yeah, you can always do that. But I think the way they have discussed it at this point, I believe that they are going to stick to their plan and not play him until they feel like he is good to go and ready to do the job for however long he's in Minnesota.
The final 3 minutes, I would like to do the what's next plan, okay? I'm going to hit you with a name, and you get up to 15 seconds to just quick twitch what you think is next for this individual.
Okay.
If you have nothing, then just let's move on.
Okay.
All right, 3-2. Caleb Evans.
I think he's going to get a chance to start. I think that battle is going to be hot between him and Blackman and whoever else ends up in that mix. I think he gets the first shot at it. It's a make or break year for him as it is for Andrew Booth.
Okay, Andrew Booth Jr. got it. Mekhi Blackman, his second year. Caleb is third. So they're still raising Blackman a different way.
Yep.
What do you think's next for him?
Well, I think he'll get a chance there. I think the thing he needs to show is, can he handle physical receivers? We saw that a few times last year at like the end of that Denver game, the end of the Cincinnati game.
Did you watch receiver?
I have watched part of it. I've seen him going at it with Devontae Adams.
A couple of East Palo Alto kids getting after it.
Yep. Yeah, that was fun.
East Palo Alto, the former murder capital of the United States of America. I believe it was 1996 when yours truly lived in East Palo Alto in Northern California, calling races at Bay Meadows.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. You got Pacific Coast Highway, which is the 101 freeway. On one side is East Palo Alto, and then on the other side,
Stanford,
about 8 minutes away with the Redwoods, is Stanford.
Yeah.
And these unbelievable houses and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think, you see probably some of the grit the competitiveness that comes from guys like Devontae Adams and Mekhi Blackman from that upbringing, probably. But I think he gets a chance as well. I think that'll be a hot battle in training camp to watch, certainly for that spot opposite Shaq Griffin. I'm also interested to see, and I know I'm going more than 15 seconds here.
No, you're good.
What do they do in the base? Yeah. Is it Byron Murphy and somebody else, or is it Byron Murphy and Shaq Griffin? I guess
Murphy and Griffin, I would guess.
I would think. And then you move Murphy. You do like the Captain Munnerlyn 2014 thing where Murphy moves to the nickel when they're in sub packages, which is most of the time anyway.
What is next for Jay Ward?
What is next for Jay Ward? That's interesting.
Swiss Army knife, though.
Well, that's the thing. I think the kickoff thing is really interesting there. The special teams thing is going to be really fascinating to watch because you can structure special teams completely differently now.
Especially when Brandon Powell has 6 kick return touchdowns.
Yeah. It's going to be really fun to watch that whole thing, I think. So he maybe turns into a bigger piece there.
Right.
Especially as Metellus plays a bigger role in the defense.
Right.
The Swiss Army knife thing could be interesting, especially if Metellus is more in a safety role at times. So, I think he'll be a guy that continues to find his way. Brian Flores likes his Swiss Army knives. So, if you're that and you can do it well, you'll find chances.
Brian Asamoah.
I think this is a make-or-break year for Brian Asamoah. I think Ivan Pace is going to be in that base package. Blake Cashman certainly is there. Brian Asamoah needs to show something to kind of prolong his time in Minnesota. There was a lot of optimism about him that first year, but then you switch coordinators. Ivan Pace takes over. We didn't see much of Asamoah last year.
Yeah.
This one is, for him and a number of guys in that 2022 draft class, is really important.
Lastly, two quickies. What's next plan? Ben Goessling, Strib. Dalton Reisner.
That one is going to be interesting to watch because
he might beat Ed Ingram out of, or if a spot's open, strangely, I mean,
either side.
Ingram has started more than Brandell.
Yes,
I feel like Brandell's more of a cinch than Ingram.
Yeah, I think both of those spots he could be in either one. But yes, I think there is a possibility he ends up at right guard with Brandell at left. If he's better than Brandell at left, maybe that's a different story. But yes, I think both of those spots are in play for him.
And lastly, Jaron Hall.
I think Jaron Hall is probably on that developmental path that, the ceiling is probably a long-term backup at this point. I mean, maybe they get more out of him than that, but when you've got J.J. McCarthy, you've got these older quarterbacks here, it's hard to see him getting as much work. I think they'll continue to work with him and hopefully see him develop, but I think you're kind of on that trajectory more so than anything bigger than that.
And thank you for the inspiring text a couple of days ago when you assured me that you will be spending all 4.5 to 5 days with yours truly in Cleveland, Ohio. Beginning August 13th, coming back like the 17th or the 18th.
Yes.
Can't wait for the lobby conversations. Doing a couple of 9 to noons there from the team hotel.
Yeah.
And, you'll saunter over there, chat with Brian Flores for 90 minutes in a lobby. Make it a pin tweet for 5 years. Do a little radio. We'll have a good time, won't we?
I haven't changed that pin tweet, have I?
At least I have all your albums.
Yes.
Thanks for coming by.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. News du Nord is next.
Welcome back, 9 to noon, and this portion of the presentation becomes News du Nord. NDN brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park. It's poker, blackjack, and table games all year round, feeling the felt. And live racing is in play. Go to CanterburyPark.com for the full 2024 live racing schedule. They got some 3-day weeks, some 4-day weeks. Get up to speed at the website and enjoy one of the finest places in Shakopee, that being Canterbury Park. To the baseball team, we know that they had some trouble with the Brewers over the weekend. They did not have trouble with the Phillies last night. Twins win 7-2. Bryce Harper smokes one in the first inning off of Ober. It's 2-0 Phils. It looks like early trouble, but Ober only allowed 2 more hits through his 7 total innings pitched. And he made it. The Twins made it 3-2 in the 5th. Manny Margot knocks in Kepler and Diego Castillo. Then they added 4 more over the 7th and 8th innings for good measure. 7-2 the final. Twins are victors. It's Zach Wheeler on the mound and Simeon Woods Richardson tonight for the Twins. The Twins are currently 4 games back from the Guardians. They're actually tied with the Royals as well. Bobby Witt Jr. just continues to mash, leads the league in like 5 different categories for the Royals, so watch out for them. But the Twins slowly creeping up on the Guardians in the AL Central. And some news for Twins fans coming out of the break. You heard on Saturday, Carlos Correa going on the IL, plantar fasciitis, how significant this is, how severe it is. Can he play through it at some point? Sounds like something we'll be talking about for weeks to come. But Royce Lewis, he was running the bases. He was seen yesterday. Proof of life for Royce Lewis, at least. He was at Target Field running the bases. And it was announced that the last hurdle, this from the Star Tribune, that he needs to clear He'll begin his assignment with the class with the St. Paul Saints. That's scheduled to start today. From Lewis, I want to get out there as soon as possible, of course, but this is good news. Hopefully it's a short-lived time out there on said rehab assignment. As we remember, Lewis he's been out already since July 3rd with a right adductor strain. Let's try to talk. Adductor strain. If he doesn't have any setbacks in the first couple of rehab games, he could rejoin the Twins on Friday for their upcoming road series against the Detroit Tigers. So the idea here, getting healthy. In the meantime, feel free to win some games. Let's go Twins against the Phillies this evening. And that's a 6:40 first pitch time. Simeon, Woods, Richardson, and Zach Wheeler. To the Gophers, Big Ten Media Days. I had Mike Grimm, voice of the Gophers, on yesterday. They're all in Indianapolis having their own showdown, hoedown, partying it up for 3 days, Tuesday through Thursday. Today through Thursday, they'll have Big Ten Media Days. The Gophers, you'll get to hear specifically from PJ Fleck, several members of the team actually out there as representatives, including running back Darius Taylor, quarterback, the New Hampshire kid. Now he's our guy, Max Brosmer, and Cody Lindenberg, I believe, will be out there representing the maroon and gold.
Was Taylor the back you had on the radio the other day?
Had him on last Thursday, yeah.
Apologies for not listening, but I saw it via the tweet machine. What'd you think? And the running back situation here always has fascinated me.
Yeah.
Because there could be like names that we talk about for 2 or 3 weeks, and then one guy's like out because of injury and the other guy's out because of whatever. Then like some no name pops in there and goes for 275 and 3.
Yeah.
PJ
crazy.
can coach offense, man. I ain't saying he's not a good overall coach, but I'm saying PJ knows offense and he knows running game. But what'd you think?
I thought he's a fantastic young kid, and sophomore, right? Still, he's just trying to stay in shape, and he's playing as himself on NCAA 25, but he's pumped to go to the media days this week. Mm-hmm. And interesting story. I encourage anybody out there to learn more about Darius. There's a Star Tribune article that talks about his childhood, grew up in Detroit, was raised by his aunt and his grandmother because sadly his father he's in jail, and he's in jail for murder. So,
oh, wow.
Kind of, focusing on how he can be a terrific role model for his younger brother. His younger brother's, I think, 7 or 8 years old. So trying to get that kid on the right path, and then also use his platform now as a well-known or soon-to-be very well-known Big Ten running back, if he stays healthy and runs like the wind, to use this platform to kind of help other kids and be a role model to those kids. So cool backstory. Awesome.
That's sweet.
It's not cool. It's super sad, but how he has overcome it, that's the big thing. But last year, he played in 6 games, so staying healthy is the A topic, right? And he stayed with Minnesota. I think he knows it, whether he watched Mo Ibrahim before him, and you go back to Rodney Smith, PJ Fleck's going to run the bleep out of the ball. Yep. So massive opportunity for him. In his, he only got 1 carry in his debut against Nebraska, but over the final 5 games he played, including the Quick Lane Bowl, he averaged $160 and a score. Like, the kid's super talented. So staying healthy, how do you keep reps off that body so he stays healthy? That was part of my chat with Mike Grimm.
So he's in the Barrett's family?
He is, yes.
Excellent.
Part of IFA. Blake was in here as well.
Yep.
And it's such a crazy thing now where we saw the news. IFA actually signed a high school athlete, and it just kind of continues to creep, younger and younger and younger early in life.
Yeah,
the commitment from a financial standpoint, kids having to be more organized as they traverse everything. It's really, and you've talked to Blake. You've known Blake for a long time. I met him through you, but Blake really did a great job of kind of explaining that they are pros. They go to school and they're connected to a school, but they're treated as if they are pros. And so handling marketing opportunities in any way to reward these kids for being the staples or the high flyers in the athletics program at these schools, Blake's busier than ever. There's no doubt. So Darius was cool.
Yeah, I don't know about you, man. I'm torn.
I'm very torn.
I'm torn because I want the student athlete, if there's compensation available for what they're giving to the university and subsequently the money that's going into the coffers of the university, and they have a lot to do with it, I absolutely believe they should be rewarded somehow.
Yep.
Okay. Now, on the other side of it, when you're getting up there like Caleb Williams, $3 to $5 million, Caitlin Clark, $3 to $5 million as a college student, and specifically for Caitlin. Now, this never was purported to be a problem, but I mean, I'm guessing she made in NIL dramatically more than the head coach.
She probably did.
I ain't thinking the head coach at Iowa for women's basketball is $4 million or above. Maybe it is, and I apologize if it is. But then that's when it can be, why am I going to listen to you? Okay, I have my own ideas. I know what I know what I like best. I make more money than you, and I'm going to be in the WNBA or the NFL next year.
Yep.
So that, if that is even a subconscious, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be the overriding vibe of an arrogant human being, but if it's even in the subconscious, well, then it brings divisiveness.
Sure.
So that's where I'm torn, because I'm with the kid, and the kid's making the school money, and the kid should make money too. But then until the kid all of a sudden is like, I ain't listening to you, I can buy and sell you, and I'm going to be gone next year.
Well, and, even to that end, talking about it, I made the joke about it. The high school kid that now has a deal, has an agent, has representation.
How about that?
How long before the Darius Taylor's brothers of the world at 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, it will continue to creep younger and younger and younger. Yeah. So it kind of becomes a manufacturing system. So there's the idea of, are you stealing this child's innocence in a way where he becomes a sellable product before he might even truly fall in love organically with the sport and that path that he appears to be so gifted at?
Yeah, well stated. When we return, the adversarial update portion of the Tuesday equation continues. We're taking a look at Minnesota Vikings opponents for this week. Maybe we'll have a trickle into next week. And one of the best team play-by-play voices in the history of the National Football League, Wayne Larrivee, our beloved Dagger. He joins us next to chat about the Green Bay Packers on KFAN.